I'm going to move straight on to a speaker from Disabled People Against Cuts, Rob Hunton. Rob Hunton's from Birmingham. He's been an active member of DPC for many years, but he's also been a disability activist for 30 years or so that I know that Rob's been fighting back, and so he's got the experience of the past as well as how he's bringing all of that experience into play now. So without any further ado, Rob.
In the process of doing this, to do this have talked and listened, not for the sake of feelings and concerns, and then initiate, engage, challenge, change, and change society by the lessons that we have learned. By doing this, we can be enabled without being right resistance for common justice, solidarity. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rob. I should have said at the beginning that after our speakers have spoken, we'll have plenty of time for contributions from the floor, hopefully to hear people's individual experiences about your own situations, but also about groups and campaigns that are organising and fighting back. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to welcome our next speaker, who's an example of how we're continuing to do that, and that's Dave Semple, who's from the PCS National Executive part of the DWP, right at the heart of the beast, someone fighting back towards unity and solidarity, not just in terms of their own workers, where 40% of job centre workers are benefit claimants themselves, where job centre workers risk being divided between full-time workers who tend to be unionised and agency workers who are more easily subject to the sanctioning targets that the PCS has done so much to expose. So it's a great pleasure that I introduce Dave to speak to us next.
It's really great to be here to talk to you today about this, because this is an issue very close to my heart. I work in a job centre, and I've seen the results of the target regimes which management deny exist and which the government deny exist. We had the inquiry into this whenever PCS exposed it a few years ago, and they said it's rogue managers. Well, we know it's not rogue managers. It's a rogue government attacking its own workforce and attacking its own citizens through the sanctions regime, and this union is absolutely and fundamentally opposed to that. What I wanted to talk about, though, is some of the attacks that have been heaped on us as a result of the sanctions regime and our opposition to it, and as a result also of our tax justice campaign. Because at the root of some of this is the fact that the government says, and convincingly says to a certain proportion of the people, they say, we can't afford to pay for these benefits. We can't afford to pay for public sector pensions. And the reason that they say that is because they're refusing to collect tax from the bosses. They're refusing to collect tax from Vodafone. They're refusing to collect tax from Starbucks, and all of the rest of them lined up beside the government who are happily donating lots of money to keep this government in power. You may have seen just during the week the victimisation of some trade union reps in the HM Revenue and Customs group of PCS. Now, this involved taking away facility time. It involved a secret memo to try and break the union in HMRC, and this is no different to what they've tried to do to my group, to DWP. They have taken away a lot of our facility time, which we would use to defend members who were accused of not sanctioning enough. And then, whenever they got rid of the idea of targets, whenever they renounced the idea of targets, they used even more hateful Orwellian expressions, such as aspirations. Now, how can you have an aspiration to sanction somebody? Is that not the height of disgracefulness? An aspiration that staff weren't meeting, and which then the government said, well, the manager said, right, okay, so it's time to put you on performance management. It's time to take the first step towards actually getting rid of this staff. And my union has been vitriolic in fighting against that and defending those staff. And despite that, we've seen 350% increase in the sanctions against people on sickness benefit. We've seen 920,000 people sanctioned on JSA in the year up till March 2014, and that is still an absolute disgrace, and we need to do even more to fight against it. And some of the things that we should be doing, I mean, we have examples of the Durham Unemployed Workers Centre, which some of you may have heard of, is staffed by ex-PCS members who used to work in the welfare system, who are advising claimants now how to beat the sanctions regime, how to make sure that they are protected, to make sure that they're not going to be sanctioned, and whenever they are sanctioned, to go back and challenge the sanction, because so many of these sanctions are aimed against the most vulnerable. They're aimed inappropriately against people who can't speak English very well. They're aimed inappropriately against people who have a disability and for whom that's not taken into account. And it has to be said as well, this is a direct parallel with how management act to their own workforce. Our staff are faced with a situation where they're told, we're not making that reasonable adjustment for your disability. We're going to dismiss you because you're off on sick for too long. And whenever that happens, of course, and our staff have to then go and claim benefits, they're told, sorry, you're sanctioned for 13 weeks because you're dismissed from a job. How is that suitable? How is that acceptable? The other things that we're doing, for example, include the sort of direct action work that's already been talked about. In Brighton, we have cases where BPAC has worked very closely with PCS, and on strike days there have been joint pickets where they've gone down to the picket line and they've talked to claimants as they go in and recruited claimants to the organisation, but they've also talked to staff, both on the picket and staff who are crossing the picket, and tried to make clear the plight that they face, tried to win the argument for a universal welfare net for all. And it's an argument we still haven't won yet, either amongst PCS staff, or PCS members, or amongst the wider population. The union absolutely fundamentally believes in a universal welfare net that affects everybody, and we totally agree with that banner there, which is no sanction for any claimant and no targets and sanctions for staff. That is absolutely clear. The problem that we face, one of the problems that we face, I should say, is that 61% of our staff have recently indicated that they still feel pressure to sanction, and that is absolutely intolerable from the point of view of the union, and we're very clear in our opposition to the pressure to sanction. In my workplace, I have personally gone around and challenged anyone on performance improvement plans, that's the performance management system, who has been charged with not making enough sanctions. And where the union is strong, then we can do that. Where the union has active and able reps to go around, we can do that. But we don't even have reps in every single workplace. So building the union is a crucial element in fighting back against the management attitude and sanctions. And not only that, but taking union organisation into the private providers, into the terror that is the work programme, where they have higher sanction rates than job centres themselves per claimant head, because there's no union there, because the staff feel insecure, because whenever the managers say, we must sanction, there's nobody to say, hang on a minute, that's not on, we're against that. There's nobody to stand up and say, solidarity, comrades, we're opposed to sanctions. So we need to build the union, we need to extend the union into these private sector providers to make sure that they too have the ability to stand up and fight back against sanctions. And more than that as well, I mean, you'll have heard that Maximus is taking over the Atos contract, and we've had Maximus involved in DWP contracts before, and they're going to be no different at all from Atos. We know this. This is not about which private company manages the sanctions regime. It's about a government that simply is not interested in supporting the most vulnerable in society. It's about a government that wants to redirect wealth distribution to the wealthy and take it away from being redirected through benefits and through other supports to the poor and to the most vulnerable. If you are interested in fighting back against that, then the best thing that you can do is to join with the DPAC and to join with the other groups that are opposed to the sanctions regime and support the PCS in the campaigns that we've been fighting. In the welfare campaign, we have no other union has done as much as we have. We have taken it to the TUC, we have taken it to other union conferences, and the only way we can do this, the only way we can beat this once and for all, is if we get them off their asses, if we get them to join us when we take strike action, and if we bring down this government once and for all.
Because you know what the freedom riders are, but we're a group of pensioners and disabled people in South Yorkshire who for the last 9 months have been fighting to get back our right to free train travel. It was something that the 4 spineless Labour councils in South Yorkshire took off us rather than fight the Tories. It was part of a Tory budget cut, and they put the cuts on to us and took away that right. Because of the campaign we've mounted, they were forced to back down in terms of disabled people, and disabled people got their right to free train travel back from early June. And the rest of us got half fare. But we decided in a united campaign of both disabled and pensioners that we weren't going to accept that, we were going to fight on for free train travel altogether. And all the way through those 9 months, we've had somewhere between 600 and 800 people across South Yorkshire involved regularly at different times in that campaign. And we've done all kinds of things, petitioning, demonstrations, lobbying councils, but most of all, we decided right from the beginning that we would go for mass civil disobedience. We were going to continue riding on trains and refusing to pay for that. And we did that successfully. running up against more and more actually transport police, and Northern Rail started hiring in extra thugs every time we were having a protest to block. Barnsley Station was blockaded every Monday for months. You couldn't get into it, in fact. But when we did get on the train, one last night in June the 23rd, we got as far as Sheffield, and there they kettle pensioners and disabled people. It just shows they'll do that tactic to anybody. They kettled us on a platform in Sheffield and arrested 2 of our main activists. They're going to be in court on Monday, December the 8th in Sheffield Magistrates Court. They booked for a 5-day trial. One of their own witnesses from the British Transport Police in the statement that they've given said he has been on EDL demonstrations and all sorts of protests, but he'd never been confronted with the animal-like anger and fight. He was fighting for his life, this poor man. This poor 16-stone heavy was quaking in his boots at the sight of all these pensioners protesting and angry. And so we want you to come in mass numbers to Sheffield on Monday, December the 8th. We've got a huge demonstration outside that court. We want to they wanted us to be intimidated by being arrested. We want to turn it back on them. We want to turn it into such a huge protest that it reinvigorates our campaign, because we're all determined. We're going to keep on fighting until we get back free train travel.
Yes. Okay, I'm Lynn Clark from Bristol Anti-Bedroom Tax Campaign. And one of the reasons I came here was to find out some of the ways that people are successfully fighting around the country. And so what I'm going to say, I just want to end up with a couple of questions. Well, I want to start by saying that in Bristol, just in the first year of its operation, a bedroom tax cost Bristol City Council £3 million in lost revenue, because every time you charge someone to the bedroom tax, that's money that you are not getting from central government. Every time you, for example, reclassify a room and say that's not, that's not big enough to be a bedroom, you don't have to pay bedroom tax on that, you start getting the money back from central government again. And what amazes me is that in Bristol, the council have decided to fix on the smallest possible size of room that you could describe as a bedroom, thus maximising the cuts in central government funding that they are getting, because that's how the bedroom tax works. What it does is it deprives each council of money from central government, and it puts the bill onto the very, very poorest people in the very poorest communities. And if you look around Bristol now that we're getting towards the end of the second year of bedroom tax, you can see, this comes towards £6 million that has been taken out of the economies of those poorest, least well-off areas in Bristol. You can see the effects of it. Shops closing, general terrible deprivation, and the bad results of that. And it seems to me that the bedroom tax is obviously a way of actually taking social housing away from us, because if you have a policy like that starves councils of funds, you're going to have rent arrears, you're going to have the huge expense of administering the bedroom tax, of taking people to tribunals or defending tribunals, taking people through eviction proceedings and so on. You're creating huge financial problems for all social housing providers, councils and housing associations. And the difficulty that I find, I've found that most Bristol City Councillors, even the ones who are against the bedroom tax, and there are many who are vehemently against it because it's bloody obviously unfair, they do not understand this. They don't understand that the money is being taken out of their budget and that they're cutting their own throat by not, for example, having a sensible policy on bedroom size which reclassifies these rooms and says they're not spare rooms at all, they're too small, or they're needed by disabled people, or whatever. They don't seem to understand this. Likewise, housing associations, you talk to people who work in housing associations, they do not realise that they are cutting their own throats, they are doing themselves out of the job, they are creating arrears, they are creating massive expense for themselves by failing to reclassify rooms so that people don't have to be charged the bedroom tax. And I'm just wondering if anybody's had any experiences. I know that there are councils where they've had a change of policy on bedroom size and on what's classified as a bedroom, and they have managed to pull this around, and it's made a very big difference, not only to lots of tenants on the ground, but to the people who are, you know, to council workers and to council funding and to the funding of housing associations. And this helps to build unity between tenants and between people, you know, who are working in housing provision. So I'd like to hear from anybody who has had that success and how they've managed to achieve it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Steve West, who will be followed by Paula Peters from DPAC.
So it's on the mic again, it's just going in and out.
Okay.
We've only got the one working mic
Yeah.
today, so the speakers making the contributions have got the proper mic.
Perhaps you'll hear me better with that. So Steve West will be followed by Paula Peters from DPAC.
Hi, I'm like Dave, I'm also on the Executive Committee for DWP. I think it's important to illustrate all the work that we're doing. I think Dave did that very well. I just want to support what Dave did. You see, the benefit cuts are an attack on all of us. They're an attack on unemployed people, disabled people, immigrants as well, because we mustn't forget that given the recent limitations on how long people from other countries can get benefits, such as job seekers allowance, known as the migrants' access to benefits, that's really a racist attack. We have to be sure about that, and we have to be fighting that as well. But what's also important to stress is that many, and possibly most people subject to benefit cuts, are actually working. Now they try to divide people between working people and unemployed people, but most people actually subject to this are actually working. Universal credit, known amongst many PCS members as universal chaos. If it ever gets fully implemented, and it's questionable whether it will, it takes over tax credits as well as housing benefits that are paid to many working people, and many of the PCS members in the DWP, because we're so low paid, workers who are told that they have to implement these cuts will also be affected by them. So there's no excuse for trade unions not to be involved in opposing them. Now Dave talked about the proud record of PCS in opposing the social security cuts. The joint campaigning work we've done with DPAC and Black Triangle, very important, but there's still immense pressure from managers to our members to impose sanctions on claimants. I work in a job centre as well. We've got the thing called performance improvement plans. There's the DWP still saying there are no targets, only expectation. We know that this amounts to a target in practice. Dave talked about this very well. People just, in my office, are being put on performance improvement plans for not meeting the district average of sanction referrals. This is turning workers who have previously supported the idea of increased sanctions, because there were, unfortunately, a lot of them. This is actually turning them against the sanction. And the word perverse has been used by some of those members, and they're right. Now the managers are going even further. They're telling people they have to refer 5% of their caseload for sanctions. We're trying to get these managers to put that in writing, because that will absolutely prove that there are targets, which we know they really are, and we will fight them on that. So, in my view, we have to continue our campaigning, but we also have to step it up. We have to show those members that we will support them absolutely, that we'll get senior reps to represent them rather than just the local reps as we normally would. And we have to continue to show claimants that we're seriously opposed to these sanctions. Now, the Benefits Justice Day of leafleting on the 11th of September, which we did as PCS jointly with them, was very good in the places that it happened. And our joint leaflet with Unite the Union, which gives the claimants advice about how to resist sanctions, has been very well received. And I'd like to see more of that, because we need it, and I think the day of action on budget day that's been prepared is very important and should be part of that joint activity. Thanks.
Yeah.
Paula Peters will be followed by Liz from Leeds.
Right, hello everybody. I'm Paula Peters and I sit on the National Steering Committee of Disabled People Against Cuts, and I'll be speaking on the plenary this afternoon. What DPAC are going to be doing next, we have launched our Who to Vote For campaign. And DPAC, as you know, are one for direct actions and protests and what have you. We're launching the DPAC Revenge Battle Bus Tour. Right? So what it means is, we're going to some of those MPs and ministers who voted for this crap and has caused the misery. So David Cameron, Ian Duncan Smith, Esther McVeigh. Be prepared because DPAC are coming. Now, in June, to highlight the Independent Living Fund campaign, we've got our stall at the back there, so we've got ILF postcards. Now, we had an action, Westminster Abbey occupation camp. 65 disabled activists, I was one, Rob Hunton was another, faced down 350 police officers. Many of them at gunpoint. We were denied food, water, medication. But you know something, we held that space for 6 hours, we stayed down. We trended top on Twitter, on Facebook, and we got mentioned from the pyramid stage at Glastonbury and did a call out saying, get up there and support these guys and what they're doing. Now, with the WCA, we've got John McCardle here from Black Triangle, who's done some amazing work around the BMA and regulations 29 and 35. And we supported the Mental Health Resistance Network, take the DWP and Ian Duncan Smith to court for the WCA Judicial Review for Mental Health Claimants. They won in court last year, not once, but twice. And this year, they put in the challenge for reasonable adjustments. And the DWP and Ian Duncan Smith are delaying, and they're causing problems for the 2 claimants who took the case to court. Right? Who took the case to court. But what I'm saying to you is this: we need all of you to support us when we're out on the road. We need you to support our campaigns on Facebook, on Twitter, sign the petitions, join DPAC, who are union members, affiliate to us. Because our rights are your rights are our rights. We're on the picket lines with you, and we need you out on the street with us. Because 2 weeks ago, we were outside Westminster Abbey over the assisted dying bill. And a police officer, and I was in my travel rates because I've got rheumatoid arthritis, he came up to me, he dragged me off the road. And you know, I said to that police officer, I said, you can drag me off the road today, but I'll be back on the road tomorrow. No matter what we're facing, support us, donate to us, affiliate with us, and also become a member, because I tell you what, we're one feisty bunch of activists and we ain't going to take this crap laying down. Thank you very much.
People would like to squeeze in, so it's Liz next.
Oh, thanks. Liz Kitchen from Leeds started fighting the bedroom tax back in 2012, actually. And our group in Leeds is called Hands Of Our Homes, and we're part of the National Federation, and we become part of the Benefits Justice campaign as well. And my friend Julie here from Huddersfield actually made that banner, no sanctions for claimants and no targets for staff. Now, about a year ago, it didn't feel like this, but it feels different now. Dave from the PCS makes all the difference. And in 2 weeks' time, on Friday the 24th of November in Leeds, we're actually meeting together, activists from Benefits Justice and Bedroom Tax with PCS. That is just a brilliant development, you know. That is really, because I know loads of people who come out of the job centre absolutely broken, you know, because they've been sanctioned. And of course, it's the staff that's the bastard, isn't it? You know, it's understandable. But that's changing, and it can change very, very quickly. So I'm excited about that. In response to the comrade from Bristol, what's happening in Leeds is just a few hundred of the big old through terraces have been reclassified people in Leeds are actually getting DHPs, and this is why the bigger part of the fight is sort of, it's calmed down a little bit, if you know what I mean. But I'll tell you what we've done in the housing associations, the one where I live, is they have reduced the staff, and the staff that are left have taken a 2.5% pay cut, plus a longer working week. That's what they've done to the staff. That's the way of getting housing officers to be against us, and you know, and all the rest of the usual divide and rule palaver, because that's what's going on. But I actually say to my, and they're not housing officers anymore, they're neighbourhood management officers. You know, it's ideological, isn't it? And I say to mine, it's all very well you saying to me, have you found anywhere to live? Like, you're the landlord, you know that there's nowhere for me to go, and what have you. So, you're up and down. People can be absolutely devastated and broken. But the truth is so are workers, so are teachers, so are lecturers, so are nurses, so everybody, because austerity does affect all of us. And it feels now, 2 years on, that actually we're uniting. And so all power to PCS. I hope we can get that through in unison as well in housing workers. Leeds unison is very, very weak, I'm afraid. Not much going on at all, and we can only do our best to try and agitate there. As a result of being an activist because of all this, I might be standing as a trade union and socialist coalition candidate in the voice in the election. That's what we've got to have. I'm actually terrified. I don't even know if I can do it, but I know this, I won't be on my own. I will not be on my own, because I'll be part of my class, and I'll be part of Unite Community, and I'll be part of National Benefit Trustees and what have you. So, don't fight back now, don't you union, build everything. We've got to smash these monsters. Good God, we have.
To be fairly disciplined, because we do want to just hear 2 or 3 minutes or so back from each of the speakers to the platform. So I've got 2 more speakers, which is the comrade behind Paula. Yeah, comrade behind Paula. And comrade in the house will be the last speaker. Oh, yeah, we've got a bit of time. Yeah.
Just then we've got everybody, so the comrade in the orange stripy shirt and then your McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everyone got that. Thanks.
The one behind Paula?
Yeah, I want to say it's a real shame that the women from the Focus P15 campaign haven't come along, but I think we should give them a round of applause anyway, because they've been absolutely inspirational over the last weeks and months. When we spoke at the People's Assembly in East London, there's 1,200 people in the room, and just when they were announced, everyone stood up straight away and gave them a long round of applause, because it's striking a call what they're saying, and it's striking a massive call in London what they're doing about the housing crisis, which all young people feel. It's a tiny minority of young people can afford to buy their own place now in London. People are being bled dry. My son's in an ex-council place in Hackney. They're paying between them for a 2-bed, 5 of them in there. 1,750, that's life for young people in London now. People in London have actually, through austerity, because of housing, been hit harder than anywhere else. And so I think this is a movement that can build. People know the story. They were evicted by the Housing Association. They went to the council, they campaigned. They all got put in a local private rented, but they haven't stopped. There's weekly stalls, and they're imaginative and bold tactics, constantly occupying. These are 20-year-old women, and they occupied the Carpenter's estate. People might have seen a Russell Band of Chews. Thousands of people turned up outside. Actually, 40 homes from the Carpenter's estate that were due to be sold off have been retrieved. They're going out across London. There's 2 towers in Rainstone, 230 properties. This is happening everywhere. They're going to do them up, and they're saying they'll get the money by selling off one of the towers, prime location overlooking the Wanstead flats. The anger of the people, but it took a bit of organisation and leaflet, but when that was done, in the pouring rain, half a mile away, 130 people come from the flats, and I've never been to a meeting where I've seen such anger, working class anger. 90% of the speakers were working class black women. I've never seen such anger, and they also organise a demonstration at the council next week. This is happening everywhere. There's 50 estates like this across London, there's probably more. Everyone in London should get stuck in this campaign because it's got massive resonance and we need to get something moving on housing. Cheers.
Greetings from Greater Manchester. 15 of us came down. Well, it's mainly the anti-bedroom tax today. We've got a very active. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We've got a very active group in Greater Manchester. Monthly meetings, and it's all 10 districts. And I'm just going to finalise and say we're also slightly involved with a case which the DWP lads should listen to in the Supreme Court. We don't trust judges, but it's gone all the way through to the Supreme Court. There's 5 categories of disabled. January. DWP people on our side should look into that. So, Supreme Court in January. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask this to come over at the back, and the last speaker will be John McCargle. I will need to ask you to stay for 2 minutes if you can, so we can bring our speakers back. We're running a bit short of time. Thank you.
Shirley Frost from Defend Council Housing and Benefit Justice Campaign Sheffield. Right, so I've been around a long time, I've seen it all, I've lived everywhere. The thing is, the situation on the ground is dire. You know, I mean, I was 20 years as a CAD advisor and I'm still helping people, you know, with things like bedroom tax appeal. I just did one now, which was successful, but it was bloody hard work. The judge seemed to be trying to be helpful, but it's interesting what she said. She said, the DWP has told us that they're going to appeal every successful bedroom tax case. Everyone. I mean, does that make sense? Have they got a lot of people and a lot of money to do that and a lot of time to waste every time? And I said, well, if they're going to do that, well, we already decided before we came in this room. I mean, I was representing somebody, obviously. And we already decided before we came in here, if we didn't win this, we wouldn't go to the next level of appeal. She said, are you trying to intimidate me? No, before that, I said to her, is the DWP trying to intimidate us? She said, oh yeah, I suppose they are. So I said, well, she said, are you trying to intimidate me? I said, no, not you, the DWP. Pass that back, okay? So, I mean, the thing is, I've seen in the paper the last few days, I mean, it's a war on the poor, I think that's what I'm trying to say. It's a war on the poor, it doesn't matter if it's benefits, job sanctions, council housing, which is part of the welfare state, still. It's a war on the poor, isn't it? Because, I mean, they are frightened of us because they know we can be very powerful if we get organised. And I will say, this is one of the best conferences I think I've ever been to, because the mood here, I do detect, is going up. It's going up. People are fighting, people are winning, they're finding out they can win. If they get to, you know, everything's got to be done collectively. I mean, I help people on an individual basis, but I know, because I'm dealing with people who are mentally, physically ill, because obviously 2/3 of people covered by bedroom tax are people who are disabled in some way. I'm also disabled as well. But the thing is, I'm a pensioner, so it doesn't affect me. But the thing is, that's not going to win it, doing one by one. I mean, I only do really desperate cases. But the point is that the government has got a war on the poor. That is absolutely clear, right? So, you know, we've got to get together as often as we can, wherever we can, to defend ourselves. Because if we don't, they're going to grind us into the ground through starvation, destitution, suicide, death.
John, and then I'll bring our speakers back in the reverse order to how I called them at the opening. Thanks, John.
I'm John McCarthy from the Black Triangle Campaign, DPAC's sister organisation in Scotland. Just a few things. So I'd like to update people about what's been happening north of the border, with a particular focus on the other question is what is to be done to put a stop to the cuts and austerity that we're facing. So I was here this week for a couple of activist gigs. I was in Chinford yesterday with people from DPAC and Class War there was a jobs fair organised by the local Tory Birmingham Association. And people were summoned there on pain of losing their benefits. And IDS arrived through the back door about 9:30 and left through the back door. And the only so-called job seekers that were in there were people who were there on pain of being sanctioned if they weren't there. And we were outside. And we doorstepped the constituency office and so on. But just goes to show what a despicable coward he is anyway. But we'll get him next time. In Scotland, the Scottish Government has made £50 million available to indemnify everyone affected by the bedroom tax with discretionary housing payments. 500,000 Scots have been protected from the changes in council tax. The Independent Living Fund for Scotland has been saved. Just last week, there was a motion in the Scottish Parliament because the Scottish, with the Smith Commission on Devolution, the Scottish Government is trying to put a stop to the rollout of personal independence payments and the scrapping of PLA, which, as we all know, is going to about 600,000 people UK-wide stand to lose their benefits. It was opposed by the Labour Party. It's come out that John Lamont, who was the leader of Labour, was told to shut up about the bedroom tax by Ed Miliband until he'd made his mind up for a year. The Scottish Labour Party is now in an absolute meltdown in Scotland. They're standing at 28% in the polls. The SNP is standing at 52%. This means that they'll only have, out of a total of 59 MPs, with Westminster unprecedented, in the Westminster election, there'll only be 4 Labour MPs. So what we have in the SNP is a social democratic left-wing party. And what we're doing as Black Triangle now is lobbying, as we've always done, for these kind of policies. I went to see the deputy leader-elect who's just been elected, Stuart Hosey in Dundee, last week, to talk about what would happen when we send that many SNP MPs to Westminster. Will we fight for everyone? Because obviously, Black Triangle stands from the very beginning, side by side with our comrades, wherever they may be. And we try to do whatever we can to complement one another's work. So what I'd like to say is, yes, the Labour Party have become known widely in Scotland now as the Red Tories. How can we stop austerity? How can we get, what we've been pushing, I'll try and wrap up, what we've been pushing is about closing this gap, this tax gap. The PCS report that came out recently, the Tax Research UK, 85 billion. They're afraid to touch the rich. I think what we need to start doing, comrades, is I think we need to start picketing local constituency Labour Party offices. And we need to confront them with this wrongdoing. And we're going to carry on doing it. Now, the best result that could come out in May would be for Labour and the SNP, Plaid Cymru and the Green Party to have a left-wing alliance on a confidence in supply arrangement whereby we can lobby to get the policies that we need through the House of Commons. So, I'd just like to round up by saying that we will continue, no matter what happens, coming down and joining our comrades in Disabled People Against Cuts. We will continue lobbying the Scottish Government, and we will fight for everyone in this country, through those auspices, through any means necessary, in every forum, in the courts, wherever, for the liberation of disabled people.
Wind up. It's going to be very quick, about a minute each. If I can bring back our 3 speakers just to round up. So in reverse order, Dave, if I can ask you to quickly just give us a...
Comrades have spoken and have identified how grim things are at the grassroots level on the ground, and PCS workers know this as well as anybody because we're the ones having to do some of this disgraceful stuff that's happening in job centres. And as a result of that, since the stricter benefit regime was introduced, 73% more staff experience verbal abuse in a job centre. 38% more staff experience physical abuse in the job centre. And if anybody saw the news from Scotland there during the week, there was an attack in Kirkcuddy Job Centre where a man walked in with a hammer and smacked a member of staff upside the head because he had been sanctioned, right? This sort of individual violence isn't what this should be about. And the problem is hopelessness. The problem is despair. And whenever you don't see how to fight back, you actually take the weapons in your own hands and you go and do something about it. The answer to that is DPAC. The answer to that is Unite Community. The answer to that is Black Triangle. And the answer to that is working together with PCS to beat the sanctions and to beat this government. Solidarity.